What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and the New York Giants wrapped up mandatory minicamp, so now they're in the long pause before training camp at the end of July, so all the players on vacation, not doing much, but we are still here to provide Giants content for you all and discuss some of these players on the roster that we think can have big seasons this upcoming 2023 campaign. And today, we're going to talk about three sleeper players that aren't getting a lot of attention from Giants fans, not a lot of excitement, that we think can have a lot of snaps this upcoming season and really make a big impact on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So we're going to go ahead and discuss these players, but before we dive into them, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And who's the first sleeper player that you want to discuss in today's episode?
I'm doing great, man. Look, the Giants have a lot more talent on this roster, as we know. We really kind of made some big upgrades this offseason, and athleticism was a priority for this coaching staff and the front office. So we've seen pretty substantial increases in a variety of different categories. But the first guy I want to talk about is Aaron Robinson. And I actually think that low-key Aaron Robinson could end up starting in the slot this year, and maybe that's a hot take, but we're going to discuss that. So essentially, I wrote this morning, Darnay Holmes, I think he goes through the Darius Slayton treatment. I think Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen say, you know what, dude, like you're making almost $3 million guaranteed. We don't think you're worth that much. I don't think many other teams will. So this is the situation at hand. You either take a pretty substantial pay cut, which is probably like half of what he's going to make, and you bet on yourself to have a good season, bounce back and perform and cash in next offseason like Darius Slayton did on a 2-year, $12 million deal, maybe a little bit less, but for Darnay Holmes if he was to perform well. But I digress. Essentially, you'd be asking him to bet on himself, take a pay cut, because he's not worth $3 million. Like, that's kind of the narrative. I think that's a reasonable thing that they could do, kind of utilize that same strategy to try and get the best out of him. Otherwise, you cut him and you save $2.7 million. And listen, Darnay Holmes, solid run stopper, solid in the slot in that regard. He's really good at sniffing out things behind line of scrimmage, but he's bad in coverage. He had 9 penalties last year. He gave up, I think, 8 games with 50 or more yards or 45 or more yards. So you can't sustain that level of inefficiency in a system that operates in heavy man coverage. So I feel as though Darnay, while I love the guy, I think he's a really solid dude, and I think that I would hate to lose him. I think that realistically, as a business decision, you have to kind of put him in a spot where he has to make a decision on what he thinks he's worth. So similar to what they did with Slayton last year. But that kind of leads me to the two other guys, Cordell Flott. We all are really high on Cordell Flott, LSU product, 3rd-round pick last year. We liked Cordell Flott a lot. He's just skinny, he's thin, and I think he's going to get the crap kicked out of him in the slot against the run. That's my biggest concern with Cordell Flott. I don't think he can hold up against the run, and I think he's going to get injured because he's too skinny. Unless he gained a little bit of muscle mass this offseason, which is totally possible. I don't think he has that type of strength to maintain his I don't think his frame can hold up in the slot primarily, but I do like Aaron Robinson there. He's aggressive. He was a slot guy back at UCF. They transitioned to the boundary. He was pretty solid in coverage. I know his sample size is small. He's been injured for the past 2 seasons, but they've been freak injuries. Like, they haven't been this like same injury over and over again. Like, he got bent over backwards, or like this happened or that happened. Just like unfortunate situations. He's physical. I think he would be a solid guy to give an opportunity to in the slot. And he really hasn't gotten the kind of sample size to justify like he's bad or not yet. So I think that there's an opening, an opportunity for him there to maybe steal a job. And I don't really trust Darnay, and I don't know what Cordell Flott is going to be. I mean, in a perfect world, I think Cordell Flott wins this job for what it's worth, because second-year player, has a lot of upside. We saw him have some good games. I think like in a perfect world, like I would want Cordell to win this spot. But because it's not a perfect world, I don't think that Aaron Robinson should be ignored or left by the wayside. What are your thoughts on Robinson, and if you think maybe he can steal some snaps this season in the slot position?
So I really like Aaron Robinson's ability to steal some snaps in the slot here, or at least the opportunity that he has, because of what you just mentioned. It's an open competition. We don't know who's going to be the starter. It's not one of those positions that we have set in stone like outside cornerback. We know Adoree Jackson's going to be a starter out there. We know Deonte Banks is going to be one of the starters. But in the slot, it's anyone's game. And you have a number of players that are going to be competing for that job. And ultimately, it might not come down to one singular starter like Aaron Robinson, Darnay. It might be by committee that they get this slot cornerback position fixed. But I do think that because they might go by committee, Aaron Robinson makes a lot of sense because he's a bit versatile. So when you're looking at some of these players who are good slot cornerbacks, they don't have the ability necessarily to get into the box like Aaron Robinson does. And when you're thinking about Wink Martindale's defense, he loves to be positionless. You're going to see safeties get into the slot. Like, you're going to see Xavier McKinney play a lot of slot snaps. You're going to see Dane Belton move into the slot plenty, and also Bobby McCain. So you're going to see a lot of safeties in the slot, but also these slot cornerbacks need to be able to move over to safety. And Aaron Robinson is the one player out of those that you just mentioned that has that ability to go from corner to safety rather than from safety to corner. And even when you think back to a couple of years ago when Robinson was a rookie, we talked to Patricia Traina on a live stream, and she mentioned that Robinson was getting groomed into that Jabril Peppers role. They were actually trying to test him out at strong safety and get him used to playing in the box more because he's so aggressive and such a good run defender. So I think that Robinson has an opportunity here to kind of play a few positions on this defense, which will ultimately give him starting level snaps, make him the bona fide starter in the slot, but also give him an opportunity to make an impact at other positions as well, like strong safety, moving into the box and making plays there. So I think that Robinson does have a unique opportunity here that he should capitalize on. But again, there's a lot of competition in that position. I think Cordell Flott is the ideal candidate for the starting slot role because he is a second-year player. He was a third-round pick. You want to see a guy like that develop. Plus, he's part of this regime. Keep in mind, Robinson was drafted by Dave Gettleman. So Joe Shane and them, they don't really have any ties to this guy. They don't necessarily need to get him to work out as a draft pick of their own because he's not. So Cordell Flott is the guy that I think they're going to try their best to get into that starting job, but I would not sleep on Aaron Robinson. I think that he has the size, he has the length, he has the aggression, all of the things that Wink Martindale is looking for in this defense. And again, all those elements to his game, they blend together and they give him the opportunity to make plays not only as a slot cornerback, but also potentially as a box safety, which is super valuable in Wink Martindale's positionless defense. But let's go ahead and talk about another breakout candidate, and this is going to be Colin Johnson. Let's move over to the offensive side of the ball. Wide receiver, 6'6", I think, the tallest receiver in football or something, maybe 6'8". I don't know. He's ridiculously sized. He's got long arms, he's aggressive, and he was making some pretty impressive plays for the New York Giants before his injury. I remember he made a spectacular catch. It didn't count, but Alex, when we went over to that game that one September 2 seasons ago against the Atlanta Falcons, Colin Johnson made a mind-blowing reception over the middle of the field. Again, it didn't count. It got called back for whatever reason, but he just has that ability to make spectacular catches because he's got such a wide catch radius. He could just pretty much bring in any ball that's thrown in his vicinity. And that's something that you love about Colin Johnson. And that's something that not a lot of Giants players or Giants receivers have currently. The Giants wide receiver core is filled with shifty, shorter, slot receivers, route runners. Colin Johnson doesn't fit that mold. Instead, he fits the mold of being one of those big, aggressive go-getters from the receiver position. And that's why I think he has a chance to sneak his way onto the back end of the roster and maybe steal some playing time. Keep in mind, this is a guy who was a starter in the NFL with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2020, and he did have significant playing time on the Giants roster in 2021. So this guy's a starter, and I know that not a lot of Giants fans are viewing him as a starter right now because we have a bunch of other names to look at. Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, Wan'Dale Robinson. These are guys who are projected starters, but Colin Johnson is good enough to be on the field for an extended amount of time, so he will steal some snaps for the Giants this upcoming season, in my opinion. And again, I really like that he brings a different element to the receiving core. Just having the size and the ability to go up there and make some of those contested, difficult catches. And again, I know that's not the Giants' bread and butter right now. They're looking for those separators who get open, but every now and then, you kind of do need to throw it up and hope for the best. And Colin Johnson is one of the guys you want out there on the field for those plays. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on Colin Johnson entering the season? And do you think that him adding that different element to the offense could be the reason why he finds playing time?
Yeah, I mean, look, Colin Johnson is primarily a boundary guy. We have a lot of slot options, my friends. We got so many guys that are going to be playing Wan'Dale when he comes back. Obviously, you got Paris Campbell and Jamison Crowder. Jalen Hyatt spent a lot of snaps in the slot during his collegiate days in Tennessee. Like, there's a lot of slot guys on this team. and not a whole lot of like established boundary guys like Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, and Colin Johnson's one of those guys that was playing so well, had the Achilles tear, obviously, but Achilles tears, like players are coming back in like 6-7 months from those these days. It's not the same thing as an ACL tear. So he's been lighting it up though so far in training camp and whatnot, or rather OTAs. So it's a good sign. Colin Johnson, he has 2 years of experience. I think he had like a career high, like 270 something yards with the Jacksonville Jaguars, like 2021. So it's not like he's been like a very productive in his NFL career. But I think the coaching staff likes him a lot. I think that he's a worker. I think that he's done everything right. I think that he wants to be on this team. I think he's fighting for an opportunity. And the fact of the matter is we don't have a ton of boundary guys. So like there is a case to make that he could sneak into the back end of that roster. I think it's going to have to be, I don't even know. It's going to have to be in the place of like a guy like Jamison Crowder. It's going to have to be in the place of a guy Jeff Smith, or I forget his name, from the Jets. There are like players here that are on the fringe. So we'll see what happens. But, worst case scenario, Colin Johnson ends up on the practice squad and they can always call him up worst case. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that he is going to be like a highly sought after commodity on the open market if he were to hit free agency. So like maybe he ends up on the practice squad and the Giants just stash him for a rainy day in the case injuries arise or whatever might happen, knock on wood. But I would say maybe there's like a 35% chance he makes the roster, which is, I feel like, reasonable considering how much depth we have there. That's the thing, though. Like, we have so much depth. We don't have, like, that top gun. I mean, we're all kind of viewing, like, Darren Waller as that guy for good reason. But I feel like we don't have, like, the top guns, but we have a ton of depth in, like, the wide receiver 2 to 4 range. There's so much depth on this team. So it kind of puts Colin Johnson in a tough spot. But if he keeps impressing, like, the Giants want guys who are performing and getting better and showcasing that consistency. Like, he could beat somebody out. So I kind of feel like that's possible.
I think it's possible too, and if you're trying to look for other cut candidates on the roster, I mean, there's a few out there that you can make a case for. I think Jeff Smith kind of stands out. He's more of a special teams player, but I think the Giants are going to find their special teams contributors elsewhere. And of course, Jamison Crowder is one of those guys that I think was a really underrated signing, just a veteran who can be an absolute security blanket in the Giants offense, but ultimately might land onto the practice squad as one of those veterans who makes it there. Keep in mind, the Giants are going to try and send a few of these players down to the practice squad. Like, we really like Bryce Ford Wheaton, undrafted free agent out of West Virginia, but ultimately they gave him a contract to put him on the practice squad for a full year and guarantee that he doesn't go elsewhere. So I think the Ford Wheaton is going to stick around on the practice squad. And again, that might open an opportunity here for Colin Johnson to sneak onto the back end of the roster and again, steal some playing time and some significant snaps. But going back over to the defensive side of the ball, I want to talk about a rookie that I'm a huge fan of, okay? Jarvarius Owens, Houston safety, the final pick for the New York Giants in this year's draft. He was a projected 4th round pick. They snagged him all the way at the back end of the 7th round, and I think that this kid could potentially start in the Giants defense within his 1st or 2nd season. I really like Jarvarius Owens. He's super athletic. He's a 4-year starter in college. He was a team captain. I really like him. I think that when you look at what he brings to the defense, no, he's not a strong safety, and the Giants need a strong safety. But the way that I view it, again, this positionless defense, Xavier McKinney is great against the run. He's great in man coverage. He can absolutely play more in the box, opening things up on the back end for Jarvarius Owens to step in there and play some free safety, and I think that he will. Again, these are players that we think are going to steal snaps, some sleeper players that aren't getting enough attention. Well, Jarvarius Owens, he's going to start getting more attention very soon if he keeps playing the way that he's been playing at OTAs, because he got his hands on quite a few footballs. He had a few pass breakups, he had an interception, and if we get into training camp and he keeps this pace, he will absolutely find his way onto the field during the preseason and definitely during the regular season, because again, Owens, not a guy that everyone's talking about, but he's making waves at these practices. And it reminds me of last year when we were talking about Darian Beavers, and then we got to the preseason. He was making plays all practices long. We got to the preseason. We were saying this is going to be our linebacker too in this defense. Unfortunately, an injury derailed that. He didn't get to play this past season, but if Jarvarius Owens can stay on the same trajectory and keep making all these plays throughout the summer, once we get to the preseason, we might be talking about him the same way that we were talking about Beavers as a rookie that we didn't expect to, but now are hoping can steal a starting job. So Owens, turning heads at practice, again, was really, really solid in coverage during his time in college. However, he does have some problems as a tackler, which is why I wouldn't throw him into the box or wouldn't throw him as that strong safety, starting strong safety that the Giants are looking for. I think this is a guy who can be your ball hawk on the back end, but once he gets into the box, his main weakness in his game is that he takes really bad tackle angles and ultimately misses a lot of tackles, which is not something that you want out of a strong safety. You can get by with a free safety making those types of mistakes, but not as a strong safety. So unless Xavier McKinney moves over to that strong safety role, Jarvarius Owens is going to have to battle with him to get onto the field. But I do think, again, because of how positionless this defense is, there's going to be an opportunity for Owens to get some playing time. But Alex, what are your thoughts on Jarvarius Owens, the way that he's kind of been turning heads at OTAs, and of course his ability to fit in here with this Giants defense?
Look, you're a huge Jarvarius Owens guy, and for good reason, right? He was a captain on Houston, 74 tackles, 8 pass breakups. The guy is pretty good. Like, he's a good player. I know it's 4.57 40-yard dash. It's like, he's not the biggest, like the best athlete in the world. I wouldn't say he's like a freak athlete, but he's like a well-rounded player. He kind of played free safety in Houston, but I'm curious to see if he can step up and help in the run. Bobby McCain's been kicking ass, in training camp, rather OTAs. He had 2 interceptions, I think, on the final day of minicamp. Like, the guy's doing well, but he's like 5'9", like not even 200 pounds. Like, he's a small guy. Can we trust him to play strong safety? Maybe not. Like, Jarvarius Owens is a little bit bigger, so I think there's an open competition there right now. And then you have Dane Belton, of course, who's kind of that hard-hitting run stopper. Like, he has a great opportunity to win that starting strong safety job as well. So with that being said, the Giants have 3 guys: Owens, Dane Belton, and Bobby McCain. That's going to be a position battle to watch this offseason, because I don't know who's going to win it, but I do know their strengths, right? Dane Belton's good in zone coverage, good run stopper. I think he get a little bit better with angles and tackling technique, but he also had that broken clavicle, and that was hurting him the whole year. He acknowledged it. He was not healthy that whole season. So I'm going to give him another chance, of course. Bobby McCain, not a great tackler, and historically has never been, but he's a really good coverage guy. Like, the Giants may actually want him to be competing in the slot for all we know. Like, he could be that utility guy. He competes in the slot, competes at, helps at free safety if they need it, can play strong safety, but not like the craziest level. And then, of course, you have Jarvarius Owens, who's a rookie, late-round draft pick, captain, really good locker room guy, great characteristics, great intangibles. He's got decent enough athleticism. He's really smart. Like, that's the thing that everyone says about Jarvarius Owens. Really, really good IQ. He gets in the right place at the right time. Good tackler, like all those things you want to see. So, from a strong safety perspective, he's decent in coverage. He can stop the run. He finds himself in good places at the right time. He's a leader. Like, that's what you want in a strong safety. Do I think he's going to start immediately? Probably not, but do I think he could win himself some starting opportunities, or at least some sizable share of snaps? Absolutely, and I think that would be a great scenario for him. But I do think that there's an open competition there. I'm not going to say that anyone's going to win it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jarvarius Owens, fought his way and at least put himself on the map to get substantial amount of snaps this upcoming season at some point.
Yeah, me too. And again, I think that Dane Belton is a good name that you mentioned there, because I think that he has more of those strong safety traits. He's 6'1". He's pretty strong and physical. I could see him playing in the box. He played a hybrid role of linebacker, safety, corner. It was a weird role, the cash defender role that he was playing during his time at Iowa, which again, I think will translate his skills into that box safety role. But again, Jarvarius Owens being a pure free safety, I really like him, what he provides in coverage, what he provides as a leader. And again, I think that he will find his way onto the field as the Giants rotate all these defensive backs on and off the field in this positionless defense. So I'm really excited to see how this defense takes shape ultimately, because I think this back seven, this defensive secondary that the Giants are building here, very positionless, very intriguing, and kind of hard to find those clear-cut starters at all of these positions, which should make things really interesting once we get to training camp and, of course, the preseason. I'm excited to see what Wink Martindale is able to cook up for his high-paced, aggressive, blitz-heavy defensive scheme. So, of course, we're going to continue to update you on everyone who starts playing well and turning heads at training camp and who might ultimately take some of these starting jobs that we discuss right here on Fireside Giants. So, make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. And, of course, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.